You're lying in bed, eyes closed, breathing slow. One moment you're aware of the ceiling, the blanket, the sound outside. The next moment, nothing. You didn't feel it happen. You never do. That's the part nobody talks about. You can't catch yourself falling asleep. You can watch yourself get tired. You can feel your eyes get heavy. But the actual crossing point, that precise moment when consciousness stops, is always invisible, always missing. And the question is why? Why does the brain erase the exact moment it shuts down? Because the answer reveals something strange about consciousness itself, something neuroscientists spent decades trying to explain, something that still isn't fully settled. Here's what we know structurally. Sleep isn't one thing, it's a sequence. Your brain moves through stages, each one measurably different from the last. Stage 1 is the shallowest. Eyes closed, body slowing, but still responsive. A door slam brings you right back. This stage lasts maybe 10 minutes. Stage 2 goes deeper. Heart rate drops, body temperature falls, brain waves slow and show sudden sharp bursts called sleep spindles. These spindles matter enormously. They actively block incoming sensory signals. Your ears still hear. Your brain stops processing. Stage 3 is slow wave sleep. Delta waves. Deep, slow, enormous electrical patterns rolling across the cortex. This is the restorative stage. Growth hormone releases here. Memory consolidation begins. Getting dragged out of this stage feels violent, disorienting, wrong. But none of those stages answer the real question. The question is about the gap, that missing seam between awake and asleep. Neuroscientists call it sleep onset. And what happens there is genuinely strange. The thalamus is a small structure seated deep in the brain. Think of it as a relay station. Every sensory signal coming in, sound, touch, light, passes through the thalamus before reaching the cortex. When you're awake, the thalamus is open. Signals flow freely. Awareness stays intact. At sleep onset, the thalamus closes. Not slowly, not gradually. It shuts down in seconds. And when it does, sensory input stops reaching the conscious brain entirely. You don't go quiet. The gate closes. That shutdown explains part of the mystery, but not all of it. The thalamus closure is the most obvious mechanism, but it's not the only change happening at sleep onset. The brain simultaneously reduces blood flow to the frontal regions responsible for critical thinking and attention. This isn't a gradual decrease. It's a targeted reduction in metabolic demand. The prefrontal cortex, the region most essential for logical thought and self-reflection, sees the sharpest decline. Without its full power, the brain can't construct coherent narratives about what's happening to it. The experience loses internal consistency. Even if sensory signals did break through the thalamic gate, the brain wouldn't be equipped to process them meaningfully. It's as if someone turned off both the telephone switchboard and the person answering the phone simultaneously. Because there's a gap even before the thalamus closes. A period of maybe 30 seconds, sometimes longer, where you're technically still awake but already losing coherent thought. Scientists call this hypnagogia, a threshold state. Neither awake nor asleep. The brain starts producing imagery without intention, sounds without source, fragments of thought that don't connect. You might hear your name called, see a flash of color, sense falling. Then your body twitches hard. That's a hypnic jerk, a muscle contraction firing suddenly. Neuroscientists still argue about why. One theory says it's a vestigial reflex, a signal from an ancient nervous system convinced the body is falling from a tree branch. The body jerks itself awake to prevent the fall. Whether that's accurate or not, the jerk is real. Most people have felt it, usually right at the edge. Hypnagogia is also where memory encoding breaks down completely. Memory consolidation requires metabolic resources. It requires sustained activity in the hippocampus, the brain's primary memory-forming structure. As sleep onset approaches, hippocampal activity drops sharply. The brain isn't recording anymore. Experiences stop being written into long-term storage. You're conscious, technically, processing information, technically. But the recorder is off. So even if you're aware of drifting for 30 seconds, that awareness leaves no trace. By morning, it's gone. Not suppressed. Not buried. Just never stored. There's nothing to retrieve because nothing was ever saved. There's a second mechanism running alongside this. Adenosine. It's a chemical that builds up in the brain during every waking hour, accumulates steadily. By late evening, adenosine levels are high enough to push the brain towards sleep regardless of what you want. Caffeine blocks adenosine receptors, temporarily. The adenosine keeps building underneath. That's why the crash comes. But adenosine also disrupts the hippocampus directly, slows consolidation, degrades encoding. So not only is the thalamus closing the sensory gate, the chemistry driving you towards sleep is simultaneously destroying your ability to form new memories. Both systems running at once. Neither one alone creates the blackout. Together, they make it inevitable. The timing of adenosine's peak effect is particularly precise. It doesn't just reach a threshold and stop accumulating. The adenosine surge accelerates as evening progresses, creating a chemical pressure that becomes almost unstoppable by midnight. This surge doesn't just affect memory circuits. It also influences the brain's ability to maintain emotional regulation and logical processing. Under high adenosine pressure, the brain becomes progressively less capable of managing complex thoughts. The mind drifts more easily. Focus fragments. This chemical cascade works synergistically with the structural changes happening in the default mode network and the thalamus. Each system reinforces the others. The gates close faster. The memories vanish more completely. The transition becomes smoother and less detectable. Some people claim they can feel themselves fall asleep, that they're aware of the exact moment. Researchers tested this directly. They connected subjects to EEG machines and tracked brainwave activity in real time. Subjects were told to press a button the instant they felt consciousness slipping. The result was consistent. By the time they pressed the button, EEG readings showed they'd already been in stage 1 sleep for several seconds. They felt the moment, but they felt it late. Their perception of when the transition happened was always delayed, always trailing the actual event. The brain reported the crossing after it had already occurred, not during, never during. That delay reveals something deeper. Consciousness isn't a live feed. It's an edited version. The brain processes information and then presents a smoothed over, slightly delayed version to awareness. Normally that lag is too small to matter, milliseconds. But at sleep onset, the lag becomes catastrophic. The transition happens fast enough that by the time consciousness receives the signal that something is changing, the signal pathway is already shutting down. The message never arrives. The lights go out before the warning gets delivered. There's one more piece. The default mode network, a set of brain regions that stay active when you're not focused on external tasks. Daydreaming, mind-wandering, internal thought. As sleep onset approaches, the default mode network destabilizes. Its internal connections begin to fragment. Regions that normally coordinate start to decouple. The continuous background narrative of self, that quiet sense of being you, breaks apart. Not all at once, piece by piece. You lose the thread. You stop tracking time. The story of the moment dissolves. And because memory requires a stable narrative context to encode properly, the fragmenting of this network is the final blow. Sensory input already blocked. Memory chemistry already degraded. Now the very structure of self-awareness is coming undone in real time. Some researchers frame this as protective, deliberate. A brain that perfectly remembered every moment of falling asleep would be a brain that couldn't let go. Sleep requires surrender. The voluntary dismantling of vigilance, a nervous system that fought that surrender, that clung to awareness at every stage, would never achieve the deep restoration it needs. The forgetting isn't a flaw. It's the system working correctly. Every mechanism that leads to the blackout, the closing thalamus, the rising adenosine, the collapsing default mode network, all of them point toward the same outcome. Stop encoding. Stop monitoring. Let go. Dreaming complicates this further. During REM sleep, the brain becomes intensely active again. Memory-adjacent regions light up. Emotion centers fire. The thalamus partially reopens. You experience a vivid internal world. And yet most dreams disappear within minutes of waking. The same mechanisms apply. Dreaming generates no permanent trace unless consolidation happens before the sleep cycle ends. Wake too fast, move directly into the day, and the dream dissolves exactly the way the onset did. Never stored, never retrieved, just gone. Researchers have started mapping these transitions with more precision in recent years. High-density EEG combined with real-time tracking shows the exact sequence of regional shutdowns during sleep onset. The frontal lobe goes quiet first, then temporal regions, then parietal. The cortex doesn't power down all at once. It shuts off in sequence, like a building at night, floor by floor, window by window, until only the deep structures are still running, maintaining the body, cycling through stages, doing the biological work that waking can't accomplish. And somewhere in that sequence, the last conscious moment happens. No fanfare, no signal, no warning. Just the final thought, half-formed, already dissolving, slipping past the point where memory can hold it. That's what sleep onset truly is. A perfectly orchestrated erasure, not a failure of consciousness, an intentional disappearance. The brain didn't forget the crossing point. It made sure you never knew it was coming.